Famously, this film was shooting at the same time as No Country for Old Men.
Let's talk about that for a bit.
And obviously, these two were competing at the Oscars for Best Picture and all these awards. And Best Supporting Actor went to No Country for Old Men. Best Leading Actor went to There Will Be Blood. So there's kind of a back and forth of who would win Best Picture and all these awards and everything. They were easily the two best films of the year and arguably two of the best films of the century, hands down. And we actually did an episode of them together back in 2020, I think.
An early one.
I think the
early
first
days.
year of the podcast, we did There Will Be Blood versus No Country for Old Men, and I'm sure many of you listened to that, and we are so grateful if you discovered us from that episode and the TikTok clips and you enjoyed it. That was such a fun episode because those are two of our personal all-time favorite movies, both in our top 25, right? For you, No Country?
No Country's a perfect movie,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so these are two perfect movies. They're so similar, but also different in many ways. And aesthetically, they're very much connected as well. They have very similar color palettes, especially There Will Be Blood, which we can talk about as well. But I just
shot in the same location,
same areas, and with that famous story that I'm sure everyone's heard about. You've probably seen like an
Instagram
movie fact or like a TikTok.
Did you
clip
know
that they were filming at the same time, very close locations? And There Will Be Blood, the sequence where they had to light the oil derrick on fire for the oil derrick explosion, and they were creating these massive plumes of black smoke in the sky during the daytime. They did different colors at nighttime for better photography and low light situations.
Oh, wow, interesting.
Yeah. So they had different mixtures depending on the time of day. So during the daytime, massive black clouds of plume smoke in the air had to shut down production on No Country for Old Men for like 2 days because they could see it in the background of where they were filming.
I'm sure the logistics actually wasn't that bad because both movies were made by the same companies, Miramax and Paramount Vantage. So I'm sure that the producers of both movies were like, this is whatever. We'll just tell them to delay. But I'm sure if it was like different studios, different companies, rivals, I'm sure it could have been a little more dramatic and more conflicting if that happened. Like
maybe a lawsuit.
Like no lawsuit happened because the same company. Like, who are you going to sue, yourself?
So I'm
sure that helped.
That was so bad for the environment what they did on There Will Be Blood. You gotta find them, Hollywood. But they use different mixtures. So the day when the sun's still up and the oil derrick's on fire, it's black smoke. But at nighttime it's a little lighter. So they changed the mixture of the concoction that they were lighting on fire up, which obviously
to be able to
oil.
Contrast with the night sky.
You could actually see it better at night.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense.
Because they shot that at sunset mostly, and then obviously the fire itself was lighting up the sequence.
Fire.
I'm Cornholio.
I am Cornholio.
Fire.
And I understand. So No Country for Old Men ended up cleaning up more at the Oscars, and it did win Best Picture and Best Director for the Coen brothers. I understand why. And it was a tough year. I was rooting for There Will Be Blood, but I was like, No Country's amazing. So when it won, I was like, I wasn't even mad or disappointed. I was just like, makes sense. So I think that the Academy, it's not like they made a decision. It's you're choosing between two impossible choices. And also, Juno actually won Best Original Screenplay, well-deserved by Diablo Cody. So that was a great year for film. Terrific movies. I understand why There Will Be Blood won. Beat for beat, it is a sensational film. It is, in my opinion, the Coen brothers' best work. A couple of the greatest performances of the century with Tommy Lee Jones and obviously Javier Bardem, who won. I think Tommy Lee should have been nominated for Best Lead Actor if he wasn't. I'm not sure if he was. And obviously, I think Robert Elswit absolutely deserved the Best Cinematography Oscar. Daniel Day-Lewis for sure. However, I will say, I do think that looking back on both films, having watched them both a lot, both about 20 watches each, I would say I think Paul Thomas Anderson deserved the Oscar for Best Director over the Coen brothers. And the Coen brothers, I think they could have won Best Director for a couple of their other movies. And I just think that No Country for Old Men and There Will Be Blood, if they came out in any other year, they would have absolutely cleaned up for sure.
Yeah, if they were a year apart, absolutely. You know, when I think about which film is better, it kind of goes back and forth for me. Right now, I'd probably say that There Will Be Blood is better, but maybe the next time I watch No Country, I'll be like, that's better.
Yeah, you did just watch it yesterday.
The thing I think No Country won Best Picture over There Will Be Blood because it's a much more digestible film for the average audience member, especially for the average Academy voter watching these movies. Not everyone loves There Will Be Blood. They find it slow and boring, whereas No Country, it's more fast-paced. It has very slow moments and patient moments. I won't even say slow, patient moments.
Yeah.
But it has actions. It's fast-paced.
It's good versus evil.
Yeah, we have guns and we're shooting stuff.
Yeah, easy themes to digest.
Yeah, so I think that's probably why it won, because for the average audience member, No Country is a lot more digestible as a viewing experience.
I totally agree. I think that's a good point because it is a more traditional plot and a more traditional film, whereas There'll Be Blood doesn't really have a plot, and it's more of just a character study. I like to compare There'll Be Blood, I would say, is a contemporary Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane doesn't have a plot. It's about a person who builds an empire, self-destructs, and destroys himself, and then dies at the end.
Rosebud.
Obviously, we don't see Daniel Plainview die in this film, but he does go through the rise, self-destruction, and it is about an incredibly powerful figure in a titan in an industry. So, and plus, on top of that, the remarkable filmmaking. That's why I like to compare both films.
I think that a lot of audience members also, they need a good guy and a bad guy.
Good versus evil.
They need a good guy, bad guy. There'll Be Blood just has a guy who's good for a little bit and very evil, we find out.
Not to say that it was extremely well received for critics.